दर्शनं श्रवणं घ्राणं रसनं स्पर्शनं मनः indriyāṇi eteṣāṁ draṣṭavyādīni gocaraḥ.
darśanaṁ, śravaṇaṁ, ghrāṇaṁ, rasanaṁ, sparśanaṁ, manaḥ, indriyāṇi eteṣāṁ, draṣṭavyādīni gocaraḥ. MMK Chapter 3, Verse 1. 6 sense powers are looking, listening, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. In their possession, there are objects to be seen, etc. There is a range of action. So I already made a version of this video yesterday, of which I was quite proud, and it went something like seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and the sensing mind. Belonging to them, there are objects to be seen, etc. There is a range of action, and I duly gave a commentary on it, of which I was quite proud. Thought I'd done a good job. And then I woke up this morning. Oh no. Once again, the proud translator turns out to be the enemy of the truth. Because first of all, when you think about what Asagos is really saying in this chapter, he's not talking about chakshur as per the old title. Chakshur means the eyesight. He's talking about especially darshana. And darshana is a NA action noun, a neuter action noun, like nirvana means going out, a fire, like a fire going out. So nirvana is an action originally, etymologically. Anything with a na ending is generally a neuter action noun. So darshana, if you think of it, see, if darshana means seeing or realizing, which it sometimes does, it's synonymous with enlightenment. And there's really a strong stimulus for some of us. You know, the ultimately valuable thing that we might get our dirty paws on, enlightenment, nirvana. But if nirvana means not a thing, but a letting go, a going out, that's shows it in quite a different light. And the same thing with seeing. You know, what's the alternative to seeing that darshana also means is looking at? See, in English, we're more precise actually. Darshana is more ambiguous. If some of the meanings given for darshana in the dictionary are, I can find it in my footnote. View, vision, perception, doctrine, opinion, and philosophical system. Furthermore, at the end of a compound, darshana means seeing, looking at, knowing, or realizing. For example, in the compound dharma darshana, knowing one's duty, or in a Buddhist context, realizing the Dharma. So, the first word of this verse is darshanaṁ, and I fell at hurdle 1 by blindly following what other translators have translated it as seeing or sight. Seeing is obviously better than sight because seeing is an action. So, darshanaṁ, what Nagarjuna is asking us to explore, I think, is darshana as an action. So seeing suggests more a realization, an end to be gained. But darshana as an action means looking at, means looking. In the similarly, shravana, you could think people would translate it as audition or hearing. But actually, I think what he's really getting at is the act of listening. And that's the key to the whole chapter, I think, is to understand that. Because hearing something, it's like a thing. It's an end to be gained. You know, do you really hear what I'm saying? That will be the end that I want you to gain. I want you to hear what I'm saying. That's the end gaining desperation. You don't see what I'm trying to say. You don't hear my message. You see, there's the frustration of the end gainer. Whereas I think what Nagarjuna's pointing to in this chapter, when we explore its deeper meaning, he's asking you to look, and he's asking you to listen. He's asking us to listen. Marjorie Barlow, I'm just going to move away the text and look at my own ugly mug on the screen here. So this is again Marjorie Barlow recommended her pupils to play. You get in front of a mirror. Those were the days before MacBooks. Get in front of a mirror and just look at yourself. So the difficulty in just looking is that we can't stop seeing things. And when we start seeing things, there are things we'd want to change. Like, wouldn't it be a bit better if I could somehow make my face more symmetrical? So there is the start of a lot of trouble. A lot of expense. If you go down the dentist, pay him a lot of money. Or go and see an osteopath or a craniosacral therapist or an Alexander technique teacher who will be happy to take your money and pander to your preconceptions that Alexander is about symmetrical posture. But what Marjorie was recommending was something quite different, having to do with what Alexander called inhibition. So inhibition in this case means giving up all idea of doing anything besides just look. You're not trying to see anything. That would be end gaining. Trying is end gaining. So looking doesn't require any kind of trying. It's an action for the sake of the action. No desire to try and see something, but just looking. I think this is probably getting boring for everybody, so I'll go back to the text. So, darśanaṁ, looking, śravaṇaṁ, listening, ghrāṇaṁ, smelling. Fortunately, I've got a cup of coffee on the go here, so I can demonstrate smelling and tasting. Apparently you smell coffee more than you taste it. So those two are very closely related. Sparśanaṁ, touching. Again, people will translate it as contact. And it does mean contact. For example, as the 6th in the 12 links of dependent arising. Translate it as contact. But again, sparśana is an NA action noun, so best translated as ing, touching. And then finally, the difficult one, manaḥ, which I translated yesterday as the sensing mind, because manaḥ generally means mind. Again, I think I've got a footnote somewhere. I'll give you what it says in the dictionary. Manas, the Sanskrit English dictionary, Monia Williams. Mind, in its widest sense, as applied to all the mental powers. Intellect, intelligence, understanding, perception, sense, thought, imagination, intention. So, if you translate, so what the 6th sense is, I know from being taught it as an Alexander technique teacher, the so-called lost 6th sense is the compound sense of proprioception. So proprio means self, proprioception, a sense of oneself. And the proprioception is centered on the vestibular system. The vestibular system is circuits joining the inner ear and the brainstem, so and the cerebellum. So very deep centers of the brain connected with the vestibular part of the inner ear. That's the vestibular system, and it's so fundamental to our sense of balance and movement that we're usually unconscious of it, because nature has put it deep down there where we can't fiddle around and mess about with it. So like we can close our eyes and cover our ears, but we can't shut off our vestibular system. Possibly 10 pints of Ansell's bitter might have done it, but no, that's not even true, because thinking back to my misspent youth, I can remember lying down and watching the ceiling go round and round, which signified the vestibular ocular motor reflex arc was playing up, but it's not the same as being shut down, is it? You know, you can close your eyes and that shuts off the visual sense, but the vestibular sense is so deep, so fundamental to who we are. So my Alexander head of training, Ray Evans, used to say that one way of explaining or understanding what Alexander work is was vestibular re-education. You're re-educating the vestibular system. Well, how do you do that? Alexander used to say we get it in movement. That's how a child educates his vestibular system, by actions like crawling on hands and knees, or crawling on the tummy, then crawling on hands and knees. Again, as I know from working as a reflex inhibition therapist, that those kind of activities are really important in human development. So how do we translate manaḥ? Well, the way I translated it yesterday was, it's the sensing mind, and I had in mind especially the vestibular system. Actually, in the process of discussing that, I made an interesting Freudian slip. As I talked about 20 years as an Alexander cheater, and that I realised afterwards there was meaning in that, because the cheating part of it is that the vestibular system is also a convenient fiction, just in the same way that eyesight is a convenient fiction, because the Dharma, the now being visited, is an act of listening, or an act of moving, or an act of looking. So if we talk about sight, the visual system, the auditory system, the vestibular system, they're all convenient fictions. And all the time I was talking about the importance of the vestibular system, on some level I knew it was, to put it politely, a convenient fiction, but on some level I didn't believe myself. Whereas when I'm making an effort to understand what Nagarjuna is saying, I really believe that this effort is worthwhile. It's only regrettable that I reveal how superficial my understanding and how lazy I can be by translating darśanaṁ as seeing and śravaṇaṁ as hearing, without really somehow sleeping on it and waking up realising, no, it doesn't mean seeing and hearing, it means looking and listening, which are quite different things. So manaḥ, what does it really mean? Well, yesterday I talked to a young bloke, reminds me very much of where I was 30 years ago, interested in the Alexander technique and in Zen, and I was making my effort to disabuse him of the view that Alexander is a kind of bodywork. And so I was emphasising why Alexander said this work is an exercise in finding out what thinking is. Because to answer my question, how do you re-educate the vestibular system? I say, first thing is in movement, like a baby does in development. But as an adult working with consciousness, the way you re-educate the vestibular system is thinking. So Marjorie Barlow's, one of her favourite phrases was, the thinking re-educates the feeling, and the feeling re-educates the body. There's a hierarchy, and it's that way round. So what Nagarjuna's talking about, and what Alexander was talking about, is thinking as an action, like looking and listening are actions. So can thinking be an action. So trying to explain this to Nishijima Sensei in the mid 1990s was what got me into a whole lot of hot water, and a major source of the resentment which I still carry around. Speaking of which, an interesting email exchange with Mike Latchford over the holidays, where he was arguing that my anger was not caused by outside, but it's rather a function of what's going on inside. And that, putting it in those terms, helped me see that what Nagarjuna would say, of course, Middle Way 101, is that the suffering of anger is not caused from within, and it's not caused from without, and neither is it a combination of the two, and neither has it got no cause, but it's dependently arisen. The answer is simple as that. Which, to be fair, Mike saw the he affirmed the orthodoxy of that way of seeing it, and that's what Nagarjuna's saying, Anyway, I digress. So manaḥ is not an NA action noun. That would be manana, and manana does mean thinking. Did I put that in the dictionary? I haven't got the dictionary definition of manana, but manana is, David Kalapahana recognised that all the other ones have got noun, so for conformity, manana, which means thinking or mentation, would be what you would expect here. But of course, Nagarjuna had run out of syllables, so manana would make the second pada have 9 syllables. So manaḥ also means thinking, so that's fine. And then in the second line, indriyāṇi sad means, on the face of it, it means the 6 senses. But again, if we think already, before the Buddha understood what the Buddha understood about the so-called senses, already in the Indian language, indriya, it means a sense. So indriyāṇi sad means the 6 senses, but it's cognate with the word indra, as in the mighty Indra, the mightiest of the gods. So indriya means conforming to Indra, conformable to Indra, to the god Indra. So it suggests something very powerful. So not what we tend to think of a sense as being a sense receptor, that's innate in us, and it receives information. So already, indriyāṇi sad suggests not only sense, but better translated, sense powers. Indriyāṇi sad, the 6 sense powers. And again, it would be a mistake, I think, to translate it the 6 sense powers, because there are not 6 separate anythings. So 6 sense powers. And I've made that the subject, because I wanted the emphasis to be on the ings. So in Sanskrit, the subject and the object, word order could be either way around. So I've translated 6 sense powers are looking, listening, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. And again, what Alexander meant by thinking is not feeling. So if I say to you, let your head go forward and up, unless you've got a lot of Alexander experience, you'll try and feel out what those words mean. So you need a teacher there by your side, really, to keep saying, no, not that, not that. As I told this chap yesterday, I told him a story of, I'd already had 2 or 3 years of Alexander training to be a teacher when I first went to Marjorie Barlow, and she put her hands on my head and neck and said, head forward, and no, you're doing it. I think I might have said this story already, but I'm getting of an age now where I've forgotten what stories I've told. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I spent 5 minutes, literally, the sweat was rolling off me because I wanted to make a good impression on Marjorie and I wasn't getting off first base. She just kept saying no. She just giving me negative feedback, you know. Most of us are scared of getting negative feedback. But sometimes it's the most valuable thing there is if it's given with skill and compassion as Marjorie was giving it. So, no, no, no. And eventually I figured out that I would have to make the leap from feeling to just wishing it. Like wishing you're going on a picnic tomorrow, which to me, when I first heard that metaphor, well, that's a lot of airy-fairy old rubbish. A martial artist such as myself can set that sort of thinking to one side. But actually, the sort of thinking I thought was more real, you know, go on, head fucking forward and up, you know, that's what I sort of tell myself. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with giving yourself a very strong stimulus. But then it's how do you respond to it? You see, one thing that makes me laugh or gets on my nerves is where you see Alexander teachers beating around the bush. They don't want to say head forward and up because they know that people will react badly and try and do it. But you can't get around the problem by saying it ever so sweetly, you know, or by garbling, head forward and up, head forward. No, it makes no difference. Let your head go fucking forward and up. Makes no difference. Let the head just gently blah, 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 like a blah, blah, blah. It's the same stimulus. I find it easier if it's given to me strongly, being a contrarian. Because if someone bosses me head forward and up, I think, sod you, you know, sod that. And so the enlightened response is not, in fact, sod you. But the enlightened response is sod that. And what you're saying sod that to is the idea that you can do it. I'm afraid I'm not saying this as clearly as I should do, but the point was that in that situation there, at some point I realised I had to give up the idea of doing it. I knew that already, but I had to give up the idea of even feeling it. I had to sort of divorce myself from that, as if you're wishing for nice weather tomorrow to go on a picnic. It's further removed from feeling and doing than anybody would realise unless they got a very experienced teacher to guide them. So this is the kind of thing that Alexander meant by thinking. It's not what you think of as thinking. So as I began to understand that, I looked again at the words of Master Yaksan. I forget how his name is pronounced in Chinese. We always went with the Japanese pronunciation. Master Yaksan, when asked what he was thinking, he said, not thinking. I'm not thinking. So the monk said, how do you think not thinking? And he said, Hishiryo. And Nishijima Sensei's explanation of that was Hishiryo is action itself. Like the act of looking, the act of listening, action. Like, again, chesta yatra gatis tatra. Where there is bodily action, there is a way to go. Okay, so in that case, the keys, just do it. Action. Well, this chap yesterday I was talking to, he was already a rugby player, you know, same as I was. So in that sense, a man of action. But he found the Alexander technique to be a revelation when he first met it. But still, his conception was grounded in body work. He hadn't understood why the Alexander work is not a kind of body work based on simply re-educating your feeling. The essence of Alexander work is thinking up. Darśanaṁ, śravaṇaṁ, ghrāṇaṁ, rasanaṁ, sparśanaṁ, manaḥ, indriyāṇi sad. 6 sense powers are looking, listening, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. Eteṣāṁ, draṣṭavyādīni gocaraḥ. So, eteṣāṁ is genitive plural of etad. Etad means this one. So eteṣāṁ means of these ones. Of these ones. And the genitive has a broad, it can also mean in their sphere, in their orbit, belonging to them, in their possession. And on reflection, I think what it suggests is that objects to be seen, which is draṣṭavyā means to be seen. So adi means beginning with, so etc. And ādīni is nominative plural. So draṣṭavyādīni means beginning with the to be seen. So plural things beginning with the to be seen. So objects to be seen, etc. And so it's not denying that, okay, as I look at there, I'm looking at a watering can. Now, the point is not to say that a watering can exists or it does not exist. A watering can is empty, and me looking at the watering can, that's how we express it. Me subject, looking verb, at the watering can object. The point of emptiness is that empty dharma is happening. That's the now being visited. In the now being visited, looking is going on. And looking is chesta, a bodily action. So we say, I am looking at the watering can. And what this is saying, the watering can, insofar as it's an object to be seen, it's not true, in that empty scenario, it's not true that it exists, and it's not true that it does not exist. But it has to be subordinate to the act of looking. That's what's really important. In the now being visited, there is bodily action, which in this case is an act of looking. And as an object to be seen, the watering can belongs to the act of seeing. It's in the possession of the act of seeing. It's not out there as an objective reality, as a thing in its own right. This is what I always sense wasn't quite true about Nishijima Sensei's emphasis on objective reality. It's the same with George Soros. He's made all his money in the markets thinking that human beings are fallible, and so there's all these reflexive situations that he calls them, and uncertainty. And so noticing a gap between fallible human views and harsh objective reality, that's the gap that Soros has exploited to make so much money. And as a way of making money, it's worked brilliantly. But philosophically, where Nagarjuna differs with that is Nagarjuna's saying he's not denying harsh realities, but he's saying they're subordinate to, or they're in the possession of, action. So that's how I understand, in their possession, in the possession of looking and listening, etc., there are objects to be seen. So draṣṭavyādīni is a nominative, so it can mean there are. And then gocaraḥ, similarly, there is. So gocaraḥ, again, is interesting. I translated it as a range of action. There is a range of action. But etymologically, go is a cow or cattle, and chara means going. So gocaraḥ means cow going or cattle grazing. And what that actually means is a cow pasture. And by extension, in the context of the senses, it means the range of operation or the range of action of the senses. So again, this is not denying that there is a range of action of the senses. I can see as far as the wall, and I can hear the range that I can listen to is pretty much limited to my own voice in this quiet place. I can't hear anything outside going on outside. So there is a range of action. I think he's saying we're not in the business when we're listening, when there's the act of listening is going on. We're not in the business of saying the range of our hearing, the range of our listening exists or it does not exist. Those are the two views that are refuted. But that range of our looking or our listening is only real insofar as it's subordinate to, it's in the possession of the acts of looking and listening. So the gist of this opening verse then really, I think, although it's not immediately obvious whatsoever, and in fact 2 years ago in 2017 when I first translated this, I had it in red font because I thought it represented what the opponent was saying. So that's just symptomatic of how badly I'd failed to see the deeper meaning that Nagarjuna is suggesting, that darśanaṁ means certainly not eyesight or vision, and not even seeing, but better, it means the act of looking. Darśanaṁ, śravaṇaṁ, ghrāṇaṁ, rasanaṁ, sparśanaṁ, manaḥ, indriyāṇi eteṣāṁ, draṣṭavyādīni, gocaraḥ. 6 sense powers are looking, listening, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. In their possession, there are objects to be seen, etc. There is a range of action.
darṣanaṁ, śravaṇaṁ, ghrāṇaṁ, rasanaṁ, sparśanaṁ, manaḥ, indriyāṇi eteṣāṁ, draṣṭavyādīni, gocaraḥ.